With election season around the corner in dozens and dozens of countries all over the world, people are looking for option B, and a desire to move to the continent of Africa is up there, right? It's top of the list. And so if you have a desire to move to the continent in 2024, I'm gonna give you a step-by-step guide on the 3 major things you need to concern yourself with today to make your plan and your goal a reality. Welcome, my name is Ashley. Welcome back to the channel if you're not new. On this channel, Ashley in Africa, I share my experience of living, moving, and doing business here on the continent of Africa. I've been in Johannesburg, South Africa for over a year now, on the continent of Africa for going on 3.5 years. Best decision ever for myself and my family, for my business, for my confidence, for my peace, for my community, for my family, for myself, for my family, for my children, for my friends, for my lifestyle. It is lit. And if you have a desire to achieve just an ounce of that, you can totally do it, but you've got to address these things first. All right. So how do you make a move to Africa in 2024? Well, you're going to have to address 3 things. Number 1, your family. Is this a decision that your family is going to support you and is going to benefit from, right? Family was one of the major concerns for me. I wanted to raise my daughters in a community of people that look like them. I no longer wanted to explain to them what being in the minority meant, what shrinking to political and law enforcement power meant, what accepting what Karen and Becky could do with less work in order for them to have to do triple the work. I didn't want that. Like, that's over with. My ancestors are like, nah, we're good. And so my family was a priority. Now, my core family, right? My 2 young children, my other core family, I wanted a place and a safe haven for them to be able to visit and to come and to be free of those exact same things, but also their lifestyle wouldn't necessarily allow for them to make the move. But I wanted to set a foundation so that when and if there was ever a decision for them to join me, I had already laid the groundwork for them to be able to come at their pace, right? Not everyone was down with that. Not everyone agreed with it, but I knew ultimately that the decision was the best thing that I could do for the children that were most affected, because sending children to school in the US today is like playing Russian roulette. And I just didn't want those things for my family. And so, you know, I shared earlier on the channel where, you know, I lost my father back in November. And while he wasn't necessarily a sick parent or an aging parent, I knew that at some point that might be an issue, but it wasn't an immediate issue at the time when I made the decision. So it didn't concern me. And I know many of you are dealing with aging and ailing parents. And so those can be challenges. But I invite you to explore what visiting them, bringing them along could look like, or setting up a lifestyle that allows you to be remote or location independent, where you can move back and forth, right? So, but family is a huge issue. It's a huge challenge. It can really be a great benefit from your family, but only if you really believe it and your why is big enough. Right, so that's a little deep. We'll get into that a little bit later, but family, number 1, you're gonna have to address that. Number 2, fear. So I get a lot of pushback when I address people's questions around their fear. And when they ask me questions related to fear, they respond that it's not fear, right? But questions around, you know, is it safe? Or how do you make friends? Or how do you make money? Or how are the children adapting? Which in our mind are generally realistic questions, but where do they come from? Because if we're speaking of people coming from certain places like the US or even the UK, when we talk about and we see the type of violence that's happening in these countries, like is it safe there? Is it safe in your country where you live? Are your children safe in that country? What are your relationships like in your home country? And what is your money like? What is your income? What is your economic support system, right? Like where you live. And so while these are reasonable questions, I often reframe them or turn them back to the person asking and say, well, what does this look like for you in your country? Because something isn't sitting right where you are in your country about these things that you're asking that about other countries here on the continent of Africa. And I'm not saying that it's perfect this side. I'm not saying that, you know, it isn't a challenge. It isn't gonna be a process for you, but that this all comes with either leading with trust, faith, or fear. And from a Christians, you can't do both. Can't have faith and fear. You gotta have one or the other, right? And so if you have that, and if you're willing to adopt that level of faith, trusting self, trusting God, trusting universe, believing in self, believing in God, having faith in universe, then where can't you make it? And while yes, it does mean you do need to have a plan for all of these things, that fear is a bigger part of the conversation than many people are really willing to diagnose. And so I invite you to look at what are the things that you're fearful of, and what are the things you can potentially mitigate. Are there places on the continent that might be a little bit more safe than others? Absolutely. Tanzania, one of the safest countries in the world. Rwanda, one of the safest countries on the continent and in the world. Ghana, there are so many places on this continent that are very safe. There are microcosms of places that are not as safe, but that exists everywhere. I remember being told the worst things about South Africa, and I have had nothing but a beautiful experience in my year plus of living here permanently, and my 3 or 4 times traveling here before my permanent relocation. So is that everyone's experience? No. However, because I have a level of faith and a level of discernment, and a community of people supporting me of like minds that are doing the same thing that I desire to do, somehow it's working out. It's really working out. And it can also for you if you're willing to dissect and uncover some of these things around your family and fear. The last thing, and one of the most important that I get asked all the time, is finances. How much money does it cost to move? How much money does it cost to live? How do you make money, right? All of these things are 1,000% concern, are 1,000% realistic concerns, and they do deserve to be dissected. And so when we're talking about the cost of living, it's important to look at your cost of living now. What is your budget? What are your expenses? How much money are you bringing in? Are you bringing any income in passively? Do you have any investment income? Do you have a substantial amount of savings that is meant for you to live your best life, right? At some point, whether you plan on that being at 65 or now, right? What have your financial habits been like up to today for you to be able to make choice-based decisions? And so the question around finances is not a one size fits all. People ask me, how much should I have? And I can't tell you how much I had versus how much you have because I don't know what your spending habits are. But I do dissect this specific question so that you can come up with a targeted answer. Yes?
Is it funny if I have chat?
Yes, you can. So if you have an interest in knowing what that number is for you, I invite you to access our #1 selling planning tool, which is the Expat Expense. It is the ultimate financial blueprint to living a life abroad. And while this tool is for you if you have a desire to move anywhere in the world, I created it specifically for people that have the desire to move to the continent of Africa, because Africa, the growth of Africa and people of Africa, African people, are a part of my mission, a part of my work, and a part of my values set. So the Expat Expense will teach you all of the things around how much you need to save, have saved, how much you're gonna spend, how to compare your cost of living, how to make sure that your family is taken care of no matter where in the world you are, along with things that you may not have thought about that are so important around taxes, estate planning, insurance. All of these things you want to prepare, because it's not just enough to say, hey, I've got $50,000 and I'm going to the continent of Africa. You might be able to make it if you're a single person, but you might not, right? So you want to prepare, use the planning tool, the Africa Investors Academy. It's our best planning tool. You'll get access to the videos, a workbook that you can own. And once you own that content, you can share it with your friends and family, so that you're able to work through these things with them as a family collectively, so that you can work together towards your common goal of moving to the continent of Africa. And if not in 2024, maybe in 2025. So I hope that was helpful. Get the Expat Expense, the ultimate planning blueprint for moving to the continent of Africa. You're gonna love it. It's our best planning tool for a reason. If you have that goal, I promise that it will support you in achieving it. And we've had over 6 families move from the US to places in Portugal, South Africa, Tanzania, and Rwanda since launching this tool in November of 2022. So really excited and happy to say that. If you have an interest, the link is in the description below. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.